Welcome to the Be Happy Now show. Flex your soul connection muscle and be your inner guide to fulfillment and purpose. I'm Claudia-Sam. If you know that you're here for a bigger reason, this is the place to be. Together, we ditch the self-care guilt and quit the go with less fear and more trust. Tune in to living life in alignment with your full potential. The Be Happy Now show starts now. Awesome. Hi, Nikkei.
Hi, it's so good to see you.
So good to see you. Oh my gosh. Be Happy Now show crew. You'll be so excited that I'm bringing my friend Nikkei on. This is going to be a powerful conversation about really loving yourself so much, loving yourself to the level that you love others and stop overgiving and finding that balance of self-trust and self-awareness and self-compassion. We're going to talk about caregiving in a relationship to yourself way, a caregiving so that you can remember that if you are used to giving a lot of yourself to others, Nikkei's going to share some tips with you on, well, how to not drain your whole energy battery. And so welcome, Nikkei. Let me introduce
Thank
you.
you. Yeah.
Nikkei is a warm-hearted Atlanta-born and Ohio-raised girlie. Her full name is Nikkei Lamodi, and she's a certified wellness coach who helps first-generation eldest daughters overcome people-pleasing so that they can improve their relationships, their work-life balance, their health without the guilt. And if you're here, this is speaking to you as well. So I'm so glad that you're here. Nikkei's clients, they're there to elevate their confidence just like you, and they learn how to use their voice and create their dreamy self-care lifestyle. She has the skills and experience to be the bridge for where you are to where you want to be. And so when she's not changing lives, she's hanging out in nature, being a foodie, and jet setting to a new destination. So welcome to the Be Happy Now show, Nikkei.
Thank you. You did so well with that introduction. I'm like, oh, I sound actually cool.
That's because you are. Oh, I'm really excited for you to be here. I mean, you and I have, briefly, actually not briefly, we've exchanged a bunch of communications and we've met before, and it just felt like it clicked. So I'm really excited that you're here. And the first thing that I would love for you to share is your journey of living in the identity of caring for others over yourself. Would you like to share that with us?
Yeah, of course. So it started for me very early on, being one, the eldest daughter, and also two, half Nigerian, as being expected to be responsible, be the example, know better. And even honestly, being a woman in this patriarchal society, I just knew, oh, I'm going to help people, right? And step into caring for others. And so that just translated into adulthood in all of my relationships with friends, with my siblings, with my parents, and then even in patients. I ended up going into a caregiving type of industry in healthcare where I was serving people. And I found I didn't know that it was compromising my needs and I was self-sacrificing. I just knew I wasn't happy. So with patients, I would work through my lunch. I would stay longer in their treatment time. I would spend more time with them. Even if I was supposed to be 40 minutes, I would give them an hour, even if I was already like mentally and physically, emotionally tapped out. And then like with relationships, when I was caregiving for my parents, I would self-sacrifice eating, or I would make sure that whatever it is that they needed was priority over what my needs were, including pursuing my own dreams, my own passions, my own pursuits. And so I just remember being so frustrated, so overwhelmed, like consumed with sadness to the point that it was like really spiraling me into a very dark place. And I just felt like, is this all I'm good for? Is just helping other people? Is anyone ever going to have my back and help me like I help them? Will I ever be able to have the freedom to make the choices to do whatever I want like everyone else? Or am I always going to be obligated to show up for people? And I just decided like either I allow for this to make me very bitter or I allow for it to make me better. And I said, I have a choice. And I decided, you know what? I'm going to allow for this to make me better. And that's when I decided to look inward. And I discovered so much in that inward reflection and pursuit. And it just like started this healing journey where I realized I was pointing the finger at everyone else as I was showing up as this helper and caregiver, and like, they need to change, they need to do this, they need to ask me what I need, they need to show up for me. And I was like, oh my gosh, the answer has been within me this whole time. And I didn't even know it. And that kickstarted this journey and using the tools I'm going to share with you all a little bit later. So that's kind of been like my journey through being a caregiver and identifying with that, and how I decided that enough is enough.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much for sharing that. Nikkei, a few words that are popping into my mind from what you shared. And one of the places that I go directly is it was your decision to change this, to make a shift, and to like you
Mhm.
decided this was enough. Like you decided, I'm not going to keep living like this. And
Yeah.
before that, you said that when is I'm you said something about, am I always going to be obligated? Is it always going to be an obligation to care for
Mhm.
others? And I'm curious, what would you say? I hear some of my clients sometimes saying, well, it's not an obligation. Like it's a responsibility.
Mm.
I want to care for them. If I don't do it, nobody else will. So can you talk a little bit on that, please?
Oh, yeah. My clients say that if I don't do it, no one else will thing too. And I like to think of it as like you know how you have informed consent? You make an informed decision that allows for you to know the pros, the cons, the risk involved. Then look at responsibility the same way. Are you making informed responsibility choices? Because if you assume a obligation to be there or show up for someone, did you consider the cost it's going to cost you and your own mental well-being, physical well-being, emotional well-being? And if you're okay with that, by all means continue to move forward. But if you're not, that's then where we need to approach some curiosity, some honesty, even maybe implementing some boundaries to then make a different decision. Because in all honesty, and this comes from losing loved ones, when you die, somebody else is going to do it. It's going to get figured out. So don't use the if I don't do it, no one else will as a way to not confront and be honest with like where you're at, how you feel about making this responsibility type of decision.
Mm. Thank you. It almost sounds like when you're willing to be vulnerable and honest with yourself and truly make decisions from a place of, is this loving for me as much as it's loving for someone else?
Yeah.
Like it's really facing ourselves.
Yeah.
And I hear that often, like, but it's uncomfortable to be in silence. But what will I do if my calendar is
Mm.
not filled? I'm going to be with
Mm.
myself. And so
Mm.
I'd love for you to share ways that living in this constant identity adversely affects, health, relationships, work-life balance, and life play balance even.
Yeah. And I love that you said that. People are like, well, if my schedule's not filled, what do I do? It's like, because that was another thing is, are you attaching what you're doing to your worth and who you are and what you have to bring, or that it validates people loving you? Because then that is going to be another motivation to keep showing up, even if you are like inside, you're like, I need a break. I can't. So I love that you mentioned that. And that bleeds into, and I don't think people realize how it bleeds into so many areas of their life. They think that they're separate, but it's not. So, like for your health is compromised when you're constantly self sacrificing to like be the helper to everyone. And it's really through the guise of chronic stress. I don't think people really understand that chronic stress is just as toxic as having a non life giving diet or not moving your body on a consistent basis, because through that, you're saying yes when you really want to say no. You're minimizing how you feel and not expressing and being honest about it because you want to make everyone else happy. Your body doesn't understand the rationale of why you're suppressing emotions, which is energy. So all of that anger, that dissatisfaction, that resentment, it's just being stored somewhere in your body because your body's like, well, where do we do with this energy? What is, oh, I don't know, let's just stuff it here. Right. Or you're using maladaptive coping strategies. You're overeating, you're binging on a TV show on Netflix, or you're adding more to your plate because you want to avoid how you feel or you want to avoid being vulnerable. So your health is compromised over time. And you think it's, oh, because I don't eat healthy or I don't move my body. And it's like, no, because you can't stop saying yes when your body is like, we need a break, say no. And then I think about like work-life balance, skipping lunches regularly because your boss sent you a thing and like, hey, can you help me with this? Or you're working late, you're working on weekends, you're taking work into your personal life. And then now it's diminishing the quality of your life because you're bringing work into personal life. And so now there's this blurred line between what's work and what's my life, or they're all just the same. And I think life and play is huge. Are you having sex with your partner? Like, what's happening? Are you able to engage in your favorite hobby, your favorite pastime? If it's puzzles, like, when's the last time you did that? If that's something you enjoy, all of these things can be impacted and you may attribute it to something else, but it's really ingrained in the core of you continuing to say yes and self-sacrificing at the expense of, I want to help people. I want to be there to serve them and show up for them. So those are just some of the ways that it can really adversely affect you. And relationships is just an obvious. You're resentful, you're bitter. Even though you're saying yes and you're like, I love them, you still feel spiteful. Like, oh, if you hadn't have called me, I could have watched my favorite show or I could have went to lunch with a friend, but I had to cancel for you. So those are just some of the ways.
Passive aggressive.
Yeah, you feel
Yeah.
passive aggressive. And then you're like, but we don't feel very, I don't feel close to that person as much. I'm like, I wonder why, you know?
That bleeding into every area of our lives, it almost, can directly link to these, to first generation eldest daughters. And even
Mm,
as an eldest daughter in my own family, I remember what it was like to have to show the example. Even I was the eldest of
mm.
9 cousins. And in these
Wow.
family reunions or gatherings, I'm the one who had to kind of, well, show up in a way that
Mm,
was the example. And I
mhm,
wonder if this also contributes to the, but I have to do it, because it's part of how we grew up. It's part of how we thought it was okay
mm.
and good enough and worthy, and we thought it was how we were loved. And so
Yeah.
I'm guessing that's kind of what you teach as well.
Yeah. When you even said that, like, we learned, I literally just said this on my Instagram the other day, is like, as eldest daughters, we learned when we follow the rules, we get validation, we get praise, and we get showered with love. So we then associate that at a young age with, oh, if I follow the rules. So you take all these different like tenets and into adulthood, you're like, oh, well, I have to do it because that's the only way people are going to love me or they're going to validate me or they're going to shower me with, appreciation. So you're like spot on. And everyone looks to you like, oh, so you tell us how we're supposed to do this or how we should show up in this way. It's like I don't like to say a burden, but it's a weight that you're carrying all the time.
And it's like saying to someone else, you decide for me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, I'm giving you
That's
the power now.
yes. Which I am so happy you said that because I think that's why people don't feel empowered to change their life because they've been so used to delegating their power out to other people to tell them what to do, what's acceptable, what's going to get them love, what's kind, all of that. And so when you're like, no, you have the power to change your life, you can change your mind, you can say no, they feel disempowered. And it's like, that's where I feel like a big part of, one of the tools I'm going to share, the self compassion, comes in so, so critically. Because if you feel disempowered, you're going to be really critical towards yourself.
Which is not fun. There's
Yeah.
no play in that at all. So,
Yeah.
why don't
So,
we go right into these 3 steps that
yeah.
you listeners can take to nurture self love without finding yourself self sacrificing for others? I know you have 3 steps for us, and you're going to share a tool in each step to help you grow in each of these areas.
Yes. Ugh, I just love talking about it. Okay, because it's so simple. Self-awareness is the first one. And self-awareness, honestly, is just your ability to monitor your internal and external world. And I like to say that because a lot of times those who tend to be caregiving for everybody, they're only looking at their external world. What does so and so need? But they're not really being monitoring their internal world. And so one tool that is simple, free, and so impactful is self-reflection and self-discovery through journaling. And I do have some clients that don't like journaling. That's okay. I tell them they can do voice memos. And sometimes I do that to verbal process. I record voice memos. But this is so good to help you observe any patterns and like see insight into like your behaviors and your thoughts that you have. Because it's one thing to just be acting on autopilot. It's another thing to pause, stop, and be self aware of what's going on. And I want to encourage the person who thinks, this isn't effective. This tool helped me to see that I thought I had to be the strong one when I was caregiving for my mom. It was a narrative that was like running on autopilot in my head, and it was influencing me not asking for help. And so when I was self journaling, I realized, like, oh, why do I think that I have to be the strong one? And then from there, working with my therapist, I realized I don't have to accept that. And the moment that I worked through not accepting that narrative anymore, I started going on trips. Family was helping me. Like I started doing more of my like fun pastimes. I felt so grounded and less anxious. And I felt less resentful toward my mom and being in that situation. But it was just through journaling and being self aware of a pattern that was going on in my head that allowed for me to make that change. So that's the first tool. And then the second one is self trust. And this one is one of those things that people don't realize it's so important and how impactful it is to just trust yourself. But it's a firm reliance on who you are. That's literally like what self trust is, that the integrity of who you are as a person. And the easiest way to like grow your self trust is to basically keep the commitments to yourself by all means necessary. And that's going to be really hard for people who love showing up to help other people. But if you make a habit of following through on the promises you make to yourself, you start to build up this bank of evidence for your brain that, like, oh, I'm always going to have my own back. I'm always going to make sure my needs are met and I advocate for myself. And this is even in the small things like sticking to a task you said you were going to do, or sticking to a schedule, or pursuing a personal project. Like it is honoring yourself in the small things that then start to ripple effect in you honoring the commitments to yourself in the big things. So if I recently made plans to speak at a workshop and I confirmed these plans with the coordinator. So I went, I made my dentist appointment, my eye exam, and she got back to me today and she's like, oh, I told you the wrong date or time. And part of me wanted to be like, should I cancel my appointments? One of them was like a year in advance. Like, I don't really know. Like, I planned so many things around it. And I was like, you know what? No, the dates are the dates in which I made my appointments to take care of myself, participate in preventative care. I clarified with her 3 times on 3 different occasions, the date and time. I said, I'm just going to kindly tell her, like, hey, I have these 2 appointments. And then she came back. She was like, no worries. That new time and date works. And it was an example. I only was able to do that in that moment because of the small times in the past that I created those small decisions to follow through on my commitments to take care of myself. So that's the second thing. And then the last thing, which we kind of oh, yeah, yeah.
I thought we could also add that in these moments of really keeping yourself accountable, really, right? Trusting yourself. And sometimes it's wobbly and it's almost like, well, you're a child learning to walk, and then you're a toddler learning to potty train.
Yeah.
And then you're building your resiliency to trust yourself and trust your intuition and trust your boundaries and know that it's okay. That's why also you and I exist, not why we exist, rather part of our mission in this life to
Mhm.
support, right, our clients and
Mhm.
hold them accountable. So if that's a place where you struggle, then you can hire coaches like Nikkei and I.
Mhm. You could also hire coaches to help you with self-awareness because
Uh-huh.
it's my favorite because coaches are so neutral. We see things from a neutral perspective and that you are missing as a blind spot. Yes, you could ask friends, family, even your boss in a personal development type of setting, but there's no motivation for us. Like we're very neutral in our observation. So 100%. Um, and this last one is self compassion, which Kristen Neff has extensive work on self compassion. So if you want to dive in deeper, she has several exercises or prompts to help you grow in this. But my favorite one is you talk to yourself like you would your bestie. That's the that's the guiding point on how am I doing in self-compassion? Because in that caregiver identity, you are always anticipating others' needs, encouraging them, serving them, but are you like talking to yourself like you would them? Are you uplifting yourself when you make a mistake with kindness like you would a best friend? Are you doing that? Because that's going to be the difference between you moving forward, like you said, wobbly, kind of just learning how to walk, standing up, taking first step, and then running. That's going to be the difference between, oh, I fell down trying to stand, and then, a couple months later, now I can fully walk, is how you talk to yourself like a best friend. So those are the three things that I zeroed in on that helped me literally not say I all I am is just being the caregiver. It's just a small strength that I have and it's not all of who I am. I'm more than that. There's so much more to me. And so yeah, those are the three tools.
Thank you. I feel like taking out
Yeah.
my celebration sticks to share, to celebrate that this is exactly where we get to go. Like, this
I
is
love it.
success to me.
I
Thank
love
you for
those.
sharing.
That is amazing.
I love them too. I love them
That
too.
is so fun.
You know, when you're saying that it's almost a muscle when we anticipate other people's needs, why wouldn't we be able to anticipate our own needs? Like, I think it is the
Mm-hmm.
same
That's
muscle. It's
good.
just, it's been trained to work on the left. Like, I brush my teeth with my right hand. And when I try to do it with my left hand, oh my gosh, it's long. So it takes forever. I get almost annoyed and impatient because it's taking too long. I'm not doing
Yeah.
it right. But if I was trying it, I don't know, 3 times a week, or if I was trying it bit by bit, then eventually I would be able to get the same job done,
Yeah.
but towards myself. So I don't know if that image is clear, but I wonder, can you add a little bit to that anticipating of other people's needs and how that can directly link to being able to anticipate our needs and developing that ability?
Yeah, I feel like a big thing with that is like what you mentioned earlier of just the silence. Like, I even had to tell a client that before she continued to keep making promises to her partner to have a transition phrase that she uses for herself that is kind of like a click for her to say, oh, we need to take time to actually think about this first. And so she came up with her phrase that if he says certain things, she's not just like, oh, because they were doing long distance. She was like, oh, yeah, I'll move here. Like, that'd be great. She came up with the phrase. And that was an inclination of her, like, okay, I need to go and take time by myself to really reflect, what do I need? How do I feel? Do I want to do this? Is there any risk involved with like serving in this way? And I think that the more you start to do that is you're not just considering another person in that thought process, you learn to start to also consider yourself. So your muscle, like I love that you use that. Your muscle starts to get stronger on both arms. Like your left bicep is already nice and strong, but your right bicep, which is the muscle you're going to use to like think about your needs, it also starts to get strong. So you consider them both in tandem instead of an afterthought. Like you're back here on the back burner and this person's like up here all the time and focus. So have a phrase, a deep breath, something for you that is a trigger, especially in the beginning, that reminds you, oh, what do I need? How do I actually feel about this? What's coming up?
Hmm. Thank you.
Yeah.
I feel like this is one of the most important muscles to flex, all of this, what
Mm,
we're talking about. Because from here, we get to let our sense of who we are, our light, our
mhm,
power, like our energy tank, we get to let that be as important as someone else's energy tank.
mm,
Meaning, if someone is negative or if someone has the go, go, go energy and you are calm and peaceful and that serves you. And then maybe the old you would feel like their energy is impacting yours. So you lose your peace and calm. They
Yeah.
therefore have power over you,
Mm-hmm.
quote
Mm-hmm.
unquote. When we flex these muscles of self awareness and self trust and self compassion and learning to um, uh, be a step ahead of our own needs, then it's
Mm.
almost like we can be the influencer as peace and calm and self love. We can be the influencer to other people instead of, and standing firmly in that and believing that it's enough instead of trying to fit in with how other
Yep.
people are. We can stand strong in our boundaries and therefore, go to your appointments and have that
Mm-hmm.
other meeting actually work for you. And it's very positive, and I feel like this is how we get to light up the world, by standing in
Mm-hmm.
our positive self-loving energy tank.
That's so good. It's so true. And I love that you said our energy tank is separate from someone else's. That I mean that actually is like, oh my gosh, because it makes me think about like how many like dreams would be realized if people realize that you have your own energy tank that you get to like fill up. I mean, it would be like amazing. But then again, that's why me and you are here to help people realize you have your own energy tank. Like this is how you can fill it up. And it's I know you've seen it in your clients and mine, like the things that people accomplish when they actually realize and accept that. It's beautiful.
Mm, thank you for being
Yeah.
here.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored. Seriously. Thank you.
It's so great to have you, and I feel like this is one of many conversations we get to have. Tell
I
us, do
love
you
how
have a
fired up. Sorry, go ahead.
no, yes, I am fired up. I am fired up. Is there something you'd like to share somewhere our listeners can find you, something they can, maybe a resource that you have that they can go and download? Where can they hang out with you?
Yeah, so I'm over on Instagram at Nikkei_Lamodi, but I also have a podcast, The Wellness Help Desk, that you can go and just binge little mini bite-sized things to help you as well, and wherever you're at, if you are wanting to get out of embracing just a caregiver identity. And I also have an email community that I email every week. And all of that is linked over on my Instagram and my podcast as well. So I love to chat with you, especially if you're an eldest daughter. So please connect with me if you are on Instagram or even if you join the email community. I respond back to emails too.
Thank you. And all the links will be in the show notes, so you'll be able to go ahead and click and easily find access to Nikkei. Thank you so much for being here. I'm so grateful for
Thank you.
you,
Thank
and
you. I had
I'm
such a good
excited.
time.
Yeah, me too. And I'm excited we get to have another conversation on the Wellness Help Desk. So look out for that as well.
Yes. Thank you.
Have a beautiful rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
How juicy was this conversation with Nikkei? I'm so excited for you to get to know her more and find her on Instagram. The links are in the show notes. And of course, to listen to the Wellness Help Desk podcast, which actually next week live. So in March, if you're listening to these episodes week after week, well, you get to go to the Wellness Help Desk where her and I had a conversation about trusting your own path, like actually stepping into uncertainty when you know it's right for you. You know that's what you want, and it might feel a bit scary. So how do you do that? How do you trust yourself to do that and to go your own way? I share 3 steps to help you with that. So be sure to go there. And later in the month, if you want to come to a free Be Happy Now show live training, where again, half of the hour is the recording of the Be Happy Now show, and the other half is live coaching and Q&A in a cozy Zoom room, we'll have a conversation about how to believe in your goals so that they can actually come true. Often what I hear is, yeah, I have this goal, but I don't really believe that it can happen. So I'm going to help you through that. We're going to kind of explore the opposite of belief which is skepticism. And so we will explore where that lives in our lives and how can we move closer to belief and really embody that and live with that belief that our goals, that we are worthy of living life in alignment with our goals. So in the show notes, you will also get the free training link so that you can register for that. All right. I am so excited to see you then. And thanks again for listening to the show. I'll see you next week. Bye.
You've been listening to the Be Happy Now show with me, Claudia-Sam. Flex your soul connection muscle and be your inner guide to fulfillment and purpose. You are worthy of being you and of connecting to what stops you from living the life you are meant to live. Access more soul connection coaching at claudiasamcoaching.com.